Hi all, I'm Ollie, this is Simply Stitchy. Today's video is the third video in my Cheating with Quilting series. The playlist for the first two videos I'll pop a link to in the top of the screen, and I'll also pop it in the description box for you. We're currently working our way through this particular quilt design. It's called Catwalk, using the Kitty the Cat fabrics by Susie B. In today's video, what we're going to be looking at doing is starting to stitch this pieced border together. Let's get into it. At the end of the last video we looked at cheat number 5, which I called ditching the fractions. Now if you're okay with working with fractions, don't feel obligated to change them all to decimals. You work in whatever kind of measurement you find is the easiest for you. I just find working in fractions a complete nightmare, so I just either skip them and use centimetres, or I'll just change them to decimals because that's just the way my brain works. But you can do it whichever way is easier for you. Today we're going to start with actually deciding where we want our squares. Now I'm using the pattern picture for the quilt top to demonstrate this for you, because I haven't actually got enough space to use the quilt top to show you what I'm doing. So hopefully you'll be able to work out what I'm doing from this. You can either follow the designer's pattern exactly as it's shown on the paper pattern, or you can decide where to put your squares on your quilt. You can put them in any order that you want to. And to do that, what you're going to need to do is have a nice big flat open space where you can lay the quilt top down flat, and then just play with moving the squares around, putting them in different orders until you're happy that you've got a design that you're comfortable with and you can be proud of. And now we can get into cheat number 6. Take a picture of it. When you're happy that you've got the layout of squares that you think looks the best, take a picture of it before you move any of those squares. And what that will enable you to do is one of two things. Number one, it will help you remember where you wanted to put your squares. Number two, you can use that picture to refer to as you're sewing those squares together, so that there's less chance that you'll sew the wrong ones to each other. I'm not saying that you're going to eliminate that completely, because we are human after all, but you will lessen the chances of getting anything in the wrong place. When you're sewing your seams together with quilting, remember you don't need to back tack either at the start or at the end. The one thing that you do need to bear in mind when you are laying your different squares out, if you've got directional prints like these ones with the cats on, if you want them to be the right way up, bear that in mind when you come to stitching your squares together. Obviously, because this row is horizontal, you want the cat to be this way up, and because this row is vertical, you want him to be this way up. It's all too easy as you're stitching to get them going like that. Now you should find that in your particular pattern it should tell you how many squares you need to make the border down the length and the border along the width. And in the first set of the instructions on this particular pattern, it does just that. It's 20 squares down the length and 17 across the top and bottom. Cheat number 7, chain piece. What we mean by chain piecing is get your little squares and put them right sides together. Now when we refer to the right side of fabric, what we mean is the side that's got the pattern on. If you turn these upside down, for instance, the reverse or the wrong side of the fabric is fainter and the picture doesn't stand out quite so well. Okay, so right sides together means you put the right side of both pieces, both squares, so that they're sandwiched like that. And then what we're going to do, we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam down the one side. And because when this strip is all stitched together, it's going to run across the top of the quilt, make sure that little cat is going in the right direction. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to put that under the foot on the 1/4 inch mark, we're going to sew that together. We've finished those squares. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab the next 2 squares and we're going to sew those together. But what we're going to do is we're going to leave the first 2 squares exactly where they are and just go straight on to sewing the next pair. Now the only thing that you really got to watch when you're doing chain piecing like this is that you don't stitch all the squares together. Make sure there's a bit of a gap between your first pair and your second pair. And we're going to go on to do the next square as exactly the same. Put the 2 together, right sides facing, and pop them under the foot. And you keep doing that until you've got all your little squares for the row all stitched together, and then it's just a case of snipping the threads in between. The next stage is to stitch your little square pairs together, and you keep doing that until you've got all your squares stitched together. Now this is actually the right hand side of the quilt going vertically, and you'll notice that I've turned the squares when I stitch them together so that the little cats are the right way up for the vertical side of the quilt. If you find when you've sewn all your strips together that some of your squares aren't quite level, don't worry too much about it. You can always trim that down a little bit, or when you come to stitch it to your quilt top, position it so that you lose that extra little bit in the seam allowance. When you've got all your squares sewn into the strips, what you're going to need to do next is give it a bit of a press. Now with quilting, when you're pressing, what you need to do is you need to press your seams to the dark side, and the reason why you do that is because if you press these seams towards the light side with the wadding and the backing fabric on the back, you stand a very good chance of being able to see those seams on the right side. So always press the seams to the dark side. So with this grey square and the blue square, for instance, you push it towards the blue square. Between the grey and the orange, you press it towards the orange, and you just keep on going until all your seams are pressed to the dark side. Now with these 2 squares here, the green and the orange, they're both a bit wishy-washy, but I'd be inclined to go towards the green side because it is just that slightly bit darker than the orange. When you're ready and all your strips are sewn together, we're going to start with the sides of the quilt top. So your longest strips, the 20 squares that you've sewn into a vertical line, we're going to stitch right sides together to the quilt top so that it looks like that. And it's going to be level with the top of the quilt. And when you've got your smaller border pieces, the ones with 17 squares in, we're going to stitch them so that they're level with the edge of the border that you've just sewn on, and they go across horizontally across the top of the quilt like that. In the next video, what we'll be doing is we'll be taking the quilt top that we've just made and putting it into the quilt sandwich and then starting to quilt the design. So be sure to subscribe and hit the little bell so that YouTube can give you a notification of when that video goes live so you don't miss it. I hope you liked today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and why not check out some of my other videos on the channel using these links or the ones in the description box below. Whichever video you go and check out next, I hope to see you back here for the next one. And in the meantime, whatever you're saying it with, embrace your creativity and have fun. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.